So, for those of you who've played the board game Risk, geography matters. And the United States would have great difficulty operating in any kind of global military role, a positive military role, defending the sea lanes, making sure that international commerce takes place, preventing terrorism from disrupting international aviation. It would be virtually impossible to do that if we did not have an ally controlling Saudi airspace. Imagine how much more difficult it would be to travel from Europe or the United States to China and India if you couldn't change planes in the Middle East. The bottom line is Saudi airspace is vitally important. So how does that connect up with the oil cycle? The way it all connects up with the oil cycle is oil prices, say, go up because, demand is rising, economic growth, OPEC feels empowered, they make a political decision to get themselves more revenue, and the revenue pours in. Now the revenue is pouring in, but of course they haven't diversified their economies because they just have this free money coming from oil. So what do they spend the money on? They spend the money on military arms. And who's happy to sell it to them? All the people who now claim that we're devastated by this terrible disaster in Syria, right? So what happens is we also have this pressure because so many dollars are flowing out of the United States and money is flowing out of Europe, and the best thing you can do in your trade deficit is to sell something back to the countries that have all the money. So that's what we do. We sell all this military equipment to Saudi Arabia and to our other allies in the Middle East who have, the money, Qatar and so forth. And then what happens is you have all these arms and, and typically, as always happens, oil producers overreach how much revenue they can get from oil. So for example, Al-Qaeda, big theme in 2003 is the Saudis are a corrupt bunch of leaders pandering to the United States. We could get $125 oil if we, Al-Qaeda, controlled Saudi Arabia. So that made the Saudi government feel on the defensive. So they thought, well, maybe we could get $125 oil. Well, guess what? That was too high a price because that meant at that price, every crazy person out there with a substitute for oil, every fantastic geologist in the United States with a new idea for a technology that might be able to produce oil at $125 a barrel, tried it.
Where are you on the frackers and whether they're going to ramp back up in terms of production again?
Oh, they're going to ramp back up.
And guess what? We got a lot of success. And so what happens when you have a lot of success is you get more supply, price starts coming under pressure. The other thing that happens is we have an international recession because energy prices become a huge drag on the global economy, and voila, guess what happens? Demand collapses just at the time when you're getting all this new oil and new alternative energy and energy efficiency cars, and all that happens at once, and you get a collapse in the price of oil. Now what happens? You just bought 10 years worth of jet fighter planes, tanks, guns, bazookas. Price of oil is going to zero. Your population doesn't understand what happened. Suddenly all the handouts you were giving out are over. I didn't get a job. I didn't become wealthy. I joined ISIS. I joined Al-Qaeda. Now you have to use the arms against me. Now you figure that to get the population distracted, you're going to use the arms against your neighbor. And guess what happens? We have such a colossal war in the Middle East, which then the United States gets involved in trying to save the outcome, that the price of oil goes back up and we start all over again. And we have been doing this since the 1956, right? And you know what? We're going to keep doing it until we realize, which hopefully we will, that there is a benefit to diversifying away from oil that has both to do with climate change and also to do with this terrible, devastating pattern that has destroyed the future for yet another generation of people in the Middle East.